Okay. So let me just share my screen. I'm going to start with some reminders before we actually go with the formal questions. So thank you and welcome to the Careers in Tech for Non-Tech Major panel event. And I wanted to introduce you to our panelists. These are their nice and beautiful, handsome faces. So we have Kasia, and I'll let them introduce themselves more later. We have Nick and Sean, and three of them are on SJSU Squared. And I'll show a screenshot of what SJSU Squared is on the next slide. And then we also have Jeremy, and I'm not sure if Jennifer is already here. So Jennifer, if you're here,
Hello.
please let us know. Oh, hi, Jennifer. Yay. Okay.
Hi.
So welcome. So let me just move on just quickly for some resources. So as I had mentioned, we have SJSU Squared. Oops. This is the online mentoring community. So you could go by, looking at hopefully you can see the link on top. And if you're a student, click on student. It'll give you more information on how to be involved. But this is one of the best ways to get connected with Kasia, Nick, and Sean. You could find them on Quick Connections after this session. So we also have a Careers in Tech for Non-Tech Majors Canvas course. If you are interested, after maybe hearing the panelists speak how they landed their job in tech and you want to learn more how to prepare for it, please consider doing the Canvas course, and you would want to email Larissa Bates. So her email is on the screen. And I don't know if the students want to take screenshots or take a picture on their phone just to keep track of this information. But for the Canvas course, you would want to email larissa.bates@sjsu.edu to request or access more information. And then also, of course, please visit the Career Center website. We have a lot of information there. We are still open and online, even if our physical office is closed. We also have all of these Career Center apps that will help you throughout your career journey. There's VMOC for resume reviews. There's Big Interview for a practice interview. There's SJSU Square if you want to do an informational interview or get connected with an alumni mentor. So we have all of these resources that you could check, and definitely, of course, SJSU Handshake if you are looking to look for opportunities. So this is my information. As I mentioned earlier, we are open. Our physical space isn't, but I do have these hours available for Zoom meetings. You could log into Handshake to find these appointment slots with me, or you can just email me directly at christine.bautista@sjsu.edu to schedule an appointment. And then lastly, for any update for COVID-19, please visit sjsu.edu Health Advisory website. Okay, so just some house rules before we get started with the actual formal question portion of this event. Please email your Tower ID to me just to know that we confirm your attendance, and also so we could follow up communication, send you any follow-up communication for today. Please keep your audio and video muted or turned off because there's a high volume of interest in this event. So we want to make sure that we focus on the panelists. So for the students, if you have any questions at any point, please type it on the chat box, and myself or Larissa Bates, who is another counselor, will read them aloud for panelists. And please address who the question is for. Okay. So now we're going to start with question number 1. There's about 8 questions. So I want each of the panelists to introduce themselves by saying their name, their major, and the year they graduated, their job title and company name, and a brief description of their company's product or service and position that they hold. So I'm going to stop share, and then I'm going to share my screen again just so people could read what my next question will be shortly. Okay, so who would like to do the honors?
I can start.
Maybe I'll let Sean, or okay, Kasia. Okay, cool. Thank you, Kasia.
I was going to volunteer her.
All right. So I'm Kasha, and I am currently a UX researcher contracted with Facebook. So I don't technically work for Facebook, but I do work on their products. And I did my master's in research and experimental psychology at SJSU, and I graduated in 2019. And before that, or before I worked at Facebook, I also worked at Google as a UX researcher. What was the last thing? Oh, okay. And then at Facebook, I work on the AR effects. So if you do like the face filters, if you ever do video chats or just photos on Facebook and Instagram, I work on the face filters and the 3D photos.
Thank you. So would like to share more about themselves next. Do I pick?
I'll jump in.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for being here. So my name is Sean Shafai. I graduated way back in 2003, I think, from SJSU with an MBA. And currently I'm at Cisco Systems, which is one of the Bay Area's largest employers. I think we were the largest for a while, and then Google and Facebook and others kind of grew up and overtook us. And what I'm doing currently, I'm called a product specialist. So I'm basically in the sales organization as technical sales. And what we do, if you don't know us, we traditionally kind of grew up as the networking company. We do all the networking out there in the world. We're the leader in that. But then in recent years, we got into a lot of different stuff, cloud, security. You may have seen a lot of our video conferencing stuff and phones, like in movies and on TV shows and things like that. So, yeah.
Thanks, Sean. So who'd like to go next?
I can go. Hi, my name is Nicholas Thorick. I am a senior application instructor at Salesforce. So what Salesforce does, actually, when I graduated, sorry, I graduated I think in 2013-ish. What Salesforce does is we are the one of the world's leading CRM platforms. So CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management or Client Relationship Management, depending on who you ask. But basically, it's a set of tools that allow salespeople to keep in touch with their customers and track every single interaction that they have and make more intelligent decisions to further their relationships with customers. So that's what our company does. What I do specifically is I teach courses on how to administer a program or within that architecture called CPQ, which is a configuration system. So if any of you are car enthusiasts, or if you've ever picked, designs for a t-shirt or something like that, where you have options and certain combinations are not valid and they all affect pricing, that is a configurator system, and that's what I teach people. So that's pretty much it. I think I didn't mention my degree. I have a BA in anthropology.
Thanks, Nick. So maybe Jeremy and Jennifer?
Yeah, I could go next.
Okay.
So hi, my name is Jennifer Winn. I majored in communications at San Jose State and graduated in 2011. My job title is I am a channel marketing manager for NVIDIA. And if you guys are a PC gamer, you guys probably know who NVIDIA is. But if not, NVIDIA actually invented the graphics processing unit. So a lot of people know Intel as a, I apologize, I'm work from home and I'm in the city and
Okay.
you're gonna hear a fire truck. But so a lot of people know Intel and their CPU, the computer's processing unit, but the GPU is the brain for processing graphics on your computer. And it's NVIDIA invented it. We are the leaders in this space. And so anything that deals with computing or high power computing, which are our bread and butter, our main high power computing product are video games, so PC games. So that's why NVIDIA and PC gaming is like salt and pepper, right? They go together. But we also use our processing technology for other industries like AI, deep learning, machine learning, cars, health, digital imaging, things like that. So you'll see our technology everywhere. What I do specifically for NVIDIA is I market the technology to PC gamers, simply put.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then last but not the least, Jeremy.
Yeah, so hey everyone, I'm Jeremy Schiefling. Just want to thank you all for making time out of your busy evenings. I know everything is a little topsy-turvy right now, but we appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And a special thanks to Christine and the whole SJSU careers team. Having worked with a bunch of higher ed career centers around the country and the world, I can tell you all, you have the best in the business. So definitely take advantage of these folks during this tough time. That being said, like Sean, I'm a little bit of a dinosaur in the tech industry, graduated in 2003 as well, education and political science major, and I've gone on to do a couple things since then. I founded a company called Break Into Tech, specifically to help non-technical folks like yourselves, like myself, to break into this space. And then number two, my current job is actually with Khan Academy, which is currently involved with a lot of remote learning, as you can imagine. And I lead their teacher marketing there as a product marketing manager. And so for anyone who's looking for a little bit of remote learning help, definitely check out khanacademy.org.
Hey, thank you. So let me just share my screen for the first question. Hold on. Okay, so can non-tech majors get decent jobs at tech companies? And how can students dispel the myth that you have to code to get a good job in the tech field? So at this point, like any of the panelists can answer the question. Not everyone has to answer. You could, you know, answer if you feel like you want to share your
Yeah, I'll jump in. I got an easy answer. I'll elaborate further, but the answer is absolutely. And I think for all of us, probably speaking for all of us here, what I've seen in my tech career over the last 20 plus years is that you talk to your peers and a lot of them have very interesting backgrounds. And you'll notice, and I don't get surprised anymore, but I used to get surprised that electrical engineering is not their background, computer science is not their background, and you hear a lot of different stories that are pretty varied. And so, I mean, I'll save some of the answers for further questions, but in general, there's a lot that goes on in tech. When I got into tech a long time ago, especially in the 90s, it was kind of more plain vanilla there in terms of what's going on in technology. Now, so much of technology has gotten into everything in society. And as a result of that, you have companies like Apple, you have companies like Facebook and Google, and they're not really like what we had as far as technology companies in the past. So I think, you know, I guess the bottom line is be open-minded in terms of what's out there. And what Jennifer was mentioning as well in terms of AI, artificial intelligence is something that's really gotten into a lot of technology, and I think it's just kind of in its infancy right now. So there's a lot of opportunities for people that weren't traditionally like computer or engineering people, that are maybe mathematics people, that are getting involved in technology. So there's constantly opportunities, and I think we'll talk about that more, especially with what's going on in the world right now, and there's ups and downs always. But yeah, I think in a word, absolutely, there's tons of people that are non-tech that have gone into the technology industry and done really well.
Yeah, I just want to echo what
Oh, sorry.
Kasia.
I have to agree with Sean. There's definitely opportunity for really any major in technology. I personally did psychology, and I ended up at tech companies doing research. And I know people with anthropology backgrounds, really any sort of background that might have some research to it can definitely go in the field I'm in.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of add on there and echo what both Kasia and Sean had shared. Back when I worked at LinkedIn, I actually sucked all the data out of LinkedIn's database to analyze this very question. Don't tell anyone over there. And basically, there's some interesting stats. So we tend to think, oh, if you work in Silicon Valley, if you work at a tech company, you've got to be an engineer. You've got to be a CS major. And the fact of the matter is that's just not true. So two things to keep in mind. Number one, 2/3 of all the people who work in the internet industry in America are working in non-technical roles. So things like product marketing, sales, business development, people operations. And the reason for that is that the technical side, as important as it is, scales really easily. Like one amazing engineer or 10 engineers on Instagram can create. Versus if you have a people-facing job, you know, if you're the world's greatest leader, the greatest motivator, the greatest salesperson, you can only motivate or sell or inspire 10 people or 100 people at a time. And so the roles that liberal arts majors and education majors gravitate towards just are going to require a lot of people. And so that's really good news for you, and the numbers don't lie. And the second thing specifically is that even though, yeah, there are a lot of CS majors in this industry, again, I was looking at the data, and if you add up all the econ, psych, and English majors, there are more of those folks than there are all the computer science majors and all of the internet space. And it just speaks to the fact that because tech is not just about pure engineering horsepower, but it's that classic sort of Steve Jobs slide of where technology meets humanity, where engineering meets the liberal arts. If you've got those incredible skills to work cross-functionally, to understand your customers, understand your colleagues, you can be a superstar in this field. And that specifically comes from the fields that you've already studied.
So before, if there's anyone else who wants to answer that question, I do want to have a follow-up. And I know, like, so far what people have been saying is, you know, like, you don't have to have an engineering degree to get into this field, right? But I did get a private question, and for the students, if you have questions, you can just send it to me directly, and I'll try to ask them in the middle of the conversation with the panelists. But there is a question: does having an AA in engineering increase your chances of securing a job at a tech company? So if you have this, maybe you have a bachelor's in liberal arts or social science, and then have an AA, does that give you an additional advantage? And anyone can answer, like, from the panel.
I don't really know. I don't have a technical degree or any technical experience as far as my education goes. I learned it all on the job, so I'm not really sure. Yeah.
I agree with Nicholas. I actually starting at NVIDIA, I had zero computer knowledge. I didn't know what a motherboard was. I didn't know what a CPU was. I learned all that knowledge on my job. But I think what the employers valued more is your problem solving process and ability to solve problems. And number two, communicate. That's a big, I mean, I could be biased because my major's in communication, but communicating, you know, what you could do, who you are, and also internally, when you're trying to work with other people, communicating what you're trying to get done is also very important in terms of positions that require a lot of collaboration, like marketing and sales.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that also, like I got a job in a tech company really early after school, and it was a small tech company, but one of the interviewers said, you know, your ability to ask the right question is something that's also valuable. And so that's something that's core to a lot of social sciences. So you social science majors out there know what I mean. The ability to ask the right questions is really the highest valued skill, I think, out there. And it's something that doesn't get called out specifically by people very often, but that doesn't mean it doesn't carry value. So I don't know if having the AA is, you know, going to give you an edge. I always think that having more knowledge is better. So good for you. You're an overachiever. That's always a good thing, I think. But kind of gearing kind of back toward that social science tilt to this session, I think that being able to ask the right questions and being able to parse the responses for the right data, that's all really the most you can do, I think, in any job. Doesn't matter if it's tech or not, and that really does flow into that communication aspect as well.
Okay, before I move on to, sorry.
Just the last thing, I just wanted to say that what Jennifer said is true in my area as well. Communication is very important because so many of the teams are very cross-functional. So I just wanted to second that from a different perspective.
So I just want to address, there's some questions here from two folks, like asking specifically what they can do with their degrees. I would recommend for those people, like, reach out to a career counselor to help out with exploring that piece. But let me just check if there are other questions before I move on to the next. So there's one specifically to Sean. So how valuable are Cisco certifications like CCNP these days, while the networking is in process of transition to SD-WAN and intended networking? As a computer science major, I'm more interested in network management rather than coding. Do you think there's a good idea to focus on that field instead of software development?
Yeah, so specific question. Yeah, I'll take the liberty, and please, I think everybody will know how to contact me after this, so I'm really happy to follow up and talk more detail. But just, I think in the interest of everyone, I'll answer it a little bit more broadly, because I think it also applies specifically to your question too. In general, I was a hiring manager for a long time, and I had a large global organization. And in general, the things with certifications are, even if they don't directly apply to the role or what's going on, it shows, I think, a number of things that are really important. One is that you have the initiative, that you recognize something that's out there and you went after it and you accomplished it. So, it shows me, if I was a hiring manager, even if it's not directly related to what I need right now, is that you went after something, you're a studious person, and you're able to accomplish something, and you made a decision, you have an opinion, and that's really important when you see someone in front of you that does that. So whether it's for CCNP or in general, I think if you stick with a lot of the major certifications that are out there, they're popular for a reason, because they have pretty cross value across the environment. So a lot of different roles, a lot of different companies could use folks with those types of skills generally. And I'm happy to kind of talk with you more detail offline about that specifically. But I think certifications have a very final thought. They have a lot of value as long as you don't get too fixated on them, that once I have this acronym or I have this piece of paper that I should be able to get a job. There's a lot more to it than that, and I think Nicholas went into a lot of that as well. There's a lot of how you show up and how you want to represent yourself, and the homework that you do before you talk to a hiring manager or to a recruiter is really important, to really show yourself well. That's someone that really kind of has it together, has done some homework, and is really ready to be useful.
Okay, well, thank you. So I want to address, like I said, I'm getting a bunch of questions, and I think some of those will actually be answered as we go through the formal questions. So if you feel that, as we go through the formal questions, your question was not answered, you can ask it again at the end of the formal Q&A. So this is all for the students. And then just reminding students, please turn off your audio and your video, because I'm hearing some TV in the background. So I don't know who's watching TV in the background, but please mute yourself. Okay, so let me just share the next question. And again, thank you, Sean, for offering your time. And you can find Sean on SJSU Square, so that would probably be the best way to reach him. So question is, how did you land the job you have today, and what was it that interested you in that role? So again, how did you land the job you have today, and what was it that interested you in that role? And anyone can answer.
This might be a bit of a tired response for you students, but network. That's one really big aspect. It's not the only aspect, but it's a big one. I landed my first tech job because of someone I knew who incidentally has a psychology degree who got a tech job, and they used their network to get that job. So it really is who you know a lot of the time, at least for that first one out the gate. Even for when you change jobs, that was true for me when I moved from Aptos to Salesforce. They're definitely, every time you make that jump, for whatever reason, right, you're going to use that network. So building connections is one really big thing. The certification question actually comes up quite a bit, even outside just Cisco. So Salesforce also has certification programs. There are a lot of companies that do. Kind of having those can be an easier way to open the door. Now, I didn't have one, but as soon as I did get some, I ended up, being contacted by a bunch of people. So it definitely does broaden your options. That's another thing that you can do for some visibility. Now, again, it just opens the door, like Sean said. it's how you show up that really matters, at least in those interviews, especially like for my kind of job. As for what interested me in teaching, I really do like seeing that aha moment on people's faces. I actually did some consulting work for a while as well, kind of building successful implementations, and that's still just like a bigger aha moment. But if you like that kind of role, there are a lot of opportunities out there, maybe not at this current moment with the whole pandemic thing, but there are usually a lot of opportunities for education out there, even if it's not in a higher education or even a school approach. It's going to be out there at companies. There are contractors, and even like Salesforce has several instructors on staff globally to teach different topics. So I like teaching because it is a fun experience. It's something that gives me a dose of people every week, because I am not really an extroverted person. I do like my alone time, so it kind of forces me to be around people and get that interaction and make sure those skills are sharp. But at the same time, it is a challenge as well. Every week is different. Nothing is ever the same. So, I guess the summary there would be, how did I come across this role? Networking really is it. And what interests me in it, it's a fun job. I get to see people discover things for the first time, all the time.
Yeah, I think networking is really important, but the way I got mine was I made sure that I was in contact with my thesis advisor because he would get requests for resumes from actual companies from previous graduate students. So that's how I heard about my first position. For the second one, I ended up just, submitting my resume to a lot of places, talking to recruiters. Some recruiters are hit or miss, but a lot of them can be really helpful. That this particular one even coached me for my first interview. So once you land a really good one, they can really help your career. How I got interested in research, or I guess in UX research, I did psychology in my undergrad, and I just wasn't sure what to do after it. So I talked to a bunch of professionals with the degrees in different professions. I set up little coffee chats, or I emailed them, and I found out about the field, and then how I could get to work in that field, which was getting a master's, in particular in research and experimental psychology. That's the one I went to, but there's different ways to get into it. And then I, again, just kind of learned from them and kind of got an idea of what it is, and then got an internship and figured out that it really is what I wanted to do, and then continued in that direction.
I'll share my story too, because I think it's central to this whole, seminar we're having right now. So I'm going to go back and not talk about my current role, but the first real technology professional job that I landed. And this was, during the go-go days of the late 90s here in Silicon Valley. And what I did was I had no professional real background in anything technology, and certainly not by degree or education. But back to the certification, I actually did leverage that pretty heavily. I recognized at the time there was one certification, it was actually from Microsoft at that time, that was pretty highly valued. Not a lot of people had it, and just in general, because tech was exploding at the time, it always is now too. I knew that if I got that certification, even though I would be just a paper, so acronym, right? I'm not really experienced. I knew that that would give me, a lot of opportunities to at least have some conversations with people. And if you mix that to what, we were talking about earlier of just really hustling, being able to kind of present yourself well, that's exactly what happened. I literally did this self-study on my own, got a bunch of books, got even a little technology equipment to play with. And it took me, 3 or 4 months, just full time, just trying to, knock this thing out. And literally once I got this overall certification, after I passed like 5, 6 tests, I had probably like 2, 3, 4 interviews lined up that next week, and got a couple of different offers and accepted one of them, and that was it. So, I mean, it's not like that will land you the job, but I think especially if you look at, again, what Jennifer was talking about, if you look at what's hot in the industry right now in terms of whether it's AI, whether, there's a lot of things, but whatever it is that interests you, if you can go after something like that and do some self-study and just be really dedicated about it, that can really pay off in a big way. And the other thing is, it doesn't hurt to do some coding or just go ahead and just learn scripting, coding on your own. You don't have to have a strong mathematics background. I don't, and I've done some coding in a background. And if you can show, like, your self-study, maybe a certification, and then you mix it with showing them some projects that you've done, just that interest you, that you have passion around, that can be pretty compelling to an employer that maybe doesn't have all the luxury in the world, because he would like to get somebody who has a boutique degree, right? Maybe from an Ivy League school, maybe they have a PhD in artificial intelligence, but that person's also going to cost $500,000 a year to employ. So there's opportunities like that. So I think what I did, and I think it's still an opportunity that's always available, is look at what your passion is, what's also hot, and be able to do that study on your own, and then start, maybe doing some coding, programming, whatever it is, put that as a package, put it in front of an employer, and that could be, really compelling for them.
Okay, thank you. So if no one else wants to add to that, I'll move on to the next question. And I see questions coming in on the side from students. As mentioned, we'll just look at the questions towards the end, because I want to make sure we go through the formal questions, as those may already address what you're hoping to get answers for. So let me just share my screen again. Okay, so next question. What are other types of jobs or positions related to this profession, and how can students best position themselves for these types of roles? So some of the questions I actually got from the students are like, what are, the entry level type position? How do they prepare for that? How do they, land their first break?
Yeah, I wanted to actually speak to sort of the overview of the tech labor market, just so folks know what's out there. Certainly when I was graduating from undergrad, not even from business school, did I have a really good sense of how the ecosystem worked. But if you sort of put aside all the engineering jobs, there are really three things that liberal arts majors can do in this space. You can either build teams, you can build products, or you can build markets. And so if you're a really sort of people-driven person and you love the idea of putting together an all-star level team and you're focused on talent, doing something like people operations, which is often known as HR outside of the tech space, can be a really great space for you. Whether it's talent attraction, talent development, just an awesome way to sort of support other folks as they launch their own journeys. If you're more excited about building products, that's where a role like product management can be really sexy and attractive. And that's that sort of quarterback role where you're figuring out, what does our audience really need? What are they hungry for? And how can we actually build that, working with a team of talented engineers, data scientists, and designers? And if you're more excited about building markets, sort of going out there into the world and selling and marketing, then you have roles like product marketing or sales or business development or even customer success, where you're trying to understand at a really deep level, what does an audience care about? Almost doing a Vulcan mind meld with your potential customer. And if you can do that, if you can sort of have that level of empathy for someone on the outside, you can ultimately reach out, inspire, motivate them, and get them to close the deal. And so if you think about sort of where your superpower lies, where do you belong in that spectrum of building teams or products or markets, you can find a sweet spot for yourself inside this industry.
I actually would like to add to Jeremy's thoughts. And I do want to add another layer, because we do have another layer of internal support roles for people who may not be as, because I'm not naturally an extrovert. So for people who are very organized and love to multitask, we have project managers that support us, because we have a gazillion projects that we need to manage and take care of. We even have analysts. If you guys love numbers and you love patterns, you like analyzing, accounting. So there's a lot of internal support roles, even creative. If you love creating visuals and pictures, we need a creative person to build a pretty banner for us. We have an idea, but we need someone who knows how to make that idea on paper or on digital canvases. So if you're a drawer, an artist, that's another realm. So there's a whole opportunity of internal support roles for external facing engineers and product managers and business developers and salespeople as well. So don't forget those guys too.
I would even say, like, if you're to take Salesforce as an example, just because that's where I work, the same thing is very, very true. So, for instance, I work in Trailhead, which is a free online learning tool, and I would argue that 70, if not 80% of us are not people who write content. We do not write content. There, are some editors. I know a few of them, but most of us are either instructors or graphic designers or video editors or event staff or salespeople or project managers. Like, there's so many different types of roles, just like Jennifer and Jeremy have said, that fit into tech. So when people say, like, oh, I want a tech job, but I don't have tech skills, I think we've kind of been saying this all along. You don't have to have a technical skill in order to work at a tech company. Tech companies are still companies. They need to be run by people who do various things. And you're going to be one of those people if you want to be. And I think that fits into what Sean said. If you kind of apply yourself and do some self-study, that'll show a level of effort to a potential employer that's very attractive on their side, saying, oh, wow, this person went out of their way to get a certification, or if you're doing Trailhead, a super badge, or whatever it is, right? So kind of going out of your way to make yourself noticeable is definitely a key thing you can do. And there are a lot of different ways you can do it, and it looks different to a lot of different roles. So kind of that superpower analogy that Jeremy made, it was perfect, and I'm going to use that in my classes as much as I can. But it was a really apt analogy. Kind of find your superpower and kind of make it sing for you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add to that?
I just wanted to mention that the other types of roles, or the people that I also work with, are definitely UX designers, industrial designers, writers. There's always a need for writers, and then primarily other researchers, and then the rest are more tech.
Okay, so let's look at the next question. Hold on, we are question number 5. So we have 8 questions, so we're almost at the end for the formal questions, and then I'll entertain questions from the audience. So let me just share the questions here. So what are the key skills that one needs to be successful in the field? How can students best build these skills while in college? So again, what are the key skills that one needs to be successful in the field, and how can students best build these skills while in college? So anyone can answer.
I'll answer it unconventionally. So maybe actually I won't answer it in terms of skills in college, but maybe some things to start thinking about. I think it's a really good time while you're still in school and studying and everything else to think about this. Is one of the things, especially in technology, and maybe all my peers here will agree with, is that stuff changes really fast and it keeps changing. So one of the skills you need to get comfortable with, and we don't get comfortable with it, so I'm just kind of being a little funny saying that, but it keeps changing. It literally does. So I mean, for example, becoming a medical doctor is very hard, right? You have to study anatomy, you have to study virus, pathology, and what have you. But in technology, literally imagine if the human body changed in 12 months or in 24 months, and you have to learn it all over again. So in some fields within technology, it literally can be like that, and it's not an exaggeration. So I guess the skill is, and where you have to, I would say, look within is, if that excites you and you have passion for that, wow, this is great, I'm going to constantly learn, this is really cool, stuff keeps changing, I'm not going to get bored, that's a really good skill. So it's not something necessarily you're going to study or take a course in while you're at SJSU, but really think about that. And again, going back to getting a job, the employers know that we're already under pressure. We know that stuff keeps changing, and our workforce needs to adapt and learn and keep going, and it's hard, it's not easy. So if you can show that kind of skill, or at least show that kind of awareness and just be ready for that, that's a really great skill for you to think about. And I think it also takes the pressure off too, for you to think that, I got to have X or Y or Z to, land a job and be looked at as valuable. Not necessarily. I think we want somebody that's going to be valuable for the long term. And so it's the stuff that you bring with you inside you that's really going to be helpful in that. And if you can show that, during an interview or what have you, it's going to be really important. And just in general, for you to be able to survive in tech, just realize that stuff changes all the time, and a very valuable skill is being able to just keep rolling with those punches.
Yeah, and to add to that, making sure that you can work in a very fast-paced environment. Projects can end in a week, maybe 2 weeks. I've had studies that took only a week. So it really, you want to make sure that you're adaptable and you're okay with the fast pace and the changes. Yeah.
I think a key word that we use internally a lot is resilience. So, not getting too invested in a certain idea of how the future looks, and just being able to go, well, that's not happening anymore. It's going to look like this instead. And as far as I work on a product that, just like all the other products at Salesforce cycle in terms of 4 months. So every 4 months, there's a host of changes that I have to be up to date on if I want to teach accurately in a classroom. And that's routine. That's exactly how it's supposed to be. But even other things as well, like just the method of teaching is changing. So, I no longer go to a classroom because of this whole pandemic thing. But even before that, I was delivering blended in-person virtual classroom experiences where you'd have 12 people online with TVs and cameras in the back. And I had a studio producer who handled them as far as technical issues. And then I taught 6 people in the room at the same time. That took a lot of adjustment, but it was really cool. Ended up being a very useful set of skills to blend. So I think that, I don't really get excited about change. I don't like it. But having the skill to at least weather it successfully is a good thing. As far as liking it, you don't have to like it. But as long as you don't hate it and you're good at it, it's probably fine.
And another thing, so right now I work on software, but before this I worked on hardware, and I find that hardware has a little bit more predictable schedule. So if you're more into that, hardware is the way to go. In terms of software, it's a little more hectic.
Seconded. Yeah.
I love what everyone shared here, because if you think about what we're talking about, the ability to learn, the ability to work quickly, the ability to change, those are all innately human characteristics and human skills. And so I think if we go back to Jennifer's comment about AI at the very beginning, as sexy as learning SQL or Python or whatever language it is today, I guarantee you 10 years from now, a computer will be able to write better SQL and better Python than 99.9% of all humans on Earth. And the reality is, if you build your entire foundation on top of shifting sands, you're going to have to deal with all that. Whereas if you invest in innately human skills, things like empathy, understanding others, working really collaboratively with folks from tons of different backgrounds and lots of different perspectives, that's the kind of thing that no computer will be able to do for 20 or 50 years. And so if you want to buy yourself sort of permanence and a place in the future, give yourself those skills that will be timeless and valuable, not just 5 years from now, but 50 years.
And I guess, Christina, I'll add one more thing to that, because I know there's some questions, maybe some of what I said was vague, where I think we're talking about soft skills, we're talking about ways to kind of get yourself ready for a long career. It's not going to be a sprint, right? Something more tangible. I mean, my undergrad wasn't technical, and I got an MBA, which is not technical, right? It's more business oriented, obviously. So that's kind of my point, is that if you can take a step back and understand, at the end of the day, why are we here? What are we doing here? We're all going to be a cog in a wheel, right? And if you're in a big company, it's a huge wheel, and you'll be more kind of distanced from reality. But that's one of the things that I did, and I would recommend for folks, is understand the big picture. So Jennifer was explaining how NVIDIA works, and Nicholas was talking about SFDC, Salesforce, how it works. Understanding that is actually pretty critical, because it allows you to just put your own work in context and also be able to even maybe navigate within your team. So when I was working with people like network engineers, and I was surrounded by them, and I was one of them, one of the things that distinguished me, and I was able to become a manager and then a senior manager, director, and all that, was the interest that I had to step away and look at, well, what are we actually trying to accomplish here? And understand the business of Cisco. Who are our customers, who are our partners, what are our products, what are we trying to do? So it sounds basic, but if you actually can take a step back and try to get more business skills at the same time, it doesn't have to be super deep if you're not super interested in it, but that is one of the things you can do regardless of what your degree is right now. Maybe you can take some coursework to understand business a little more broader. And I had zero interest in any of that, just to be very honest. I did not have interest in business. I was more of technology, even though I didn't have a technology background. But as I learned more, it was like, wow, this is really cool. This is how stuff works and why stuff works the way that it does in the world. So I would say if you got those kind of skills, even a little bit, that will be pretty useful to understand the picture around you.
And even some other tech, like tech jobs, business knowledge is a requirement. So like for me working at Salesforce, I can't do my job without knowing what business process is like because our company helps improve business process. So that's kind of integral knowledge, right? And it kind of depends on where you go. But if you want to, kind of dip your toe in both worlds, find a place where you can do both. That's not an impossibility.
I just want to make a quick off-topic comment. I actually use Salesforce pretty religiously to manage my projects with my partners. So,
Woohoo! There you go. My husband works at NVIDIA, by the way.
oh,
There you go.
maybe we know each other. Okay, offline.
Going back to the question, how can students best build these skills while in college? I would suggest working on some external projects. You can ask your professors for extra stuff. They always have something that they want to work on. And just building your portfolio, or specifically for research, but I'm sure there's other jobs that would be helpful to have a portfolio for interviews.
Yeah, I did the same thing so even for a BA in anthropology at San Jose State, I did external project work with some of the faculty, and it really did help to have something to talk about during an interview from that standpoint. And it taught me a lot about project management too, and how much I did not want to be a project manager, which is valuable. But even the things you learn, it's good to have that experience under your belt. So absolutely, try to find that.
Okay. So thank you all for answering that question. And I mean, just earlier during this portion, I saw Jennifer and Nick just sharing some love, right? So you can see like how important it is to really like, everyone has been talking about like networking and then also skills. There's no one straight formula, I guess, right? From what I'm hearing everyone say, you have to try different things, be flexible, and be open. So let's look at the next question. So here we go. So number 6, how did your non-tech background prepare you for a career in tech? And what were some of your experiences that you had in your undergrad that helped you enter the tech field? So again, how did your non-tech background prepare you for a career in tech? And what were some of your experiences that you had in your undergrad that helped you enter the field?
So I think just to fill the void, I think, and Kasia, I think you're going to back me up on this, but research methods don't apply just to research. They apply to a lot of things. That organization, that rigor can be applied to a lot of different things in tech. But as far as actually getting the job or kind of aligning, there are a lot of different things that you can use from your degree, and some of mine were like working on that external project. So mine was an End World Hunger project for Google that was a San Jose State anthropology partnership. And it involved talking about food sources with the people who provide them. And I think that those kinds of projects where you have to go out and meet people are going to be really useful for your jobs in tech, because even after you land the job, you're never really done meeting new people, and you're never going to be done networking either. And I know that it may seem like a stale response, but it's always going to be relevant, working those people skills and making sure that one, you get noticed, but also you create some genuine connections. And someone actually asked in the thread earlier about being an introvert and networking. How does that work? I think if you just pick a couple people, it doesn't have to be thousands of people at a time. You may go through thousands of people to find the right people, but kind of settle on those few people. and you'll be fine. But as far as like, leveraging your degree or what I used in my degree, it was definitely research methods, kind of using that rigor and that format and that organization is quite attractive to employers. And you can spell it out as long as you kind of spell it out as a transferable skill, it'll serve you well.
Yeah, one example I'll give, when I was working in IT at Cisco and I was in a networking organization, we were coming up with services all the time, like VPN for people to use or what have you. And, we would ask our population, we got like 50,000 employees at the time, we got 70,000 now. And my colleagues would ask, like, okay, well, here's the questions we're going to ask employees about what they want. And my social sciences background, I was criminal justice, anthropology, nothing to do with tech. But, we were taught as social scientists, how do you actually do a proper, valid survey? You can't just ask questions, willy-nilly. They have to be defined a certain way so you don't lead people, you get the right answers back that are valid, et cetera, et cetera. So that was one of the things I was able to contribute. I would tell the guys, well, listen, we're asking these questions. These are actually not great questions to ask. We should ask it in a different way. So that's just one example, again, where when you have people, we're actually at an advantage. You can look at it this way, that we're not just coming in as coders and electrical engineers, what have you, is because we have a broader background. Again, back to business and understanding the big picture, we can contribute in a lot of different ways that the other peers in front of us may have not taken any of those courses. They don't have any exposure to, thinking about things in different ways. So that's just something to think about.
I do want to mention something, maybe take it back to something you guys can relate to currently as college students, is how you have to work on group projects all the time, probably, as a college student. So one thing that I learned was very valuable in the workforce that I wish I took more seriously in college was, when I work in group projects, taking the advantage to lead the group and help the group start from zero to finish. So having that skill under your belt and doing that practice, basically taking advantage of these group projects to gain that skill to lead and collaborate, is going to go so far when you go into the workforce. So just something you can apply now.
Thanks for sharing that, Jennifer, because I think a lot of students don't think of, their actual classroom experiences as preparing them, for the workforce, right? So that's a good point. So let me move on to the next question. Let me just share my screen again, and then, oh, sorry, like I'm looking at the questions. So this is the list of questions that students have, sorry. I'm keeping track so I can go back later. But let me just go back to, so we now have question number 7. Hold on, let me just share. So what was the biggest challenge you had when transitioning from college to the world of work? So what was the biggest challenge you had when transitioning from college to the world of work?
Yeah, so I want to speak to this one because I was just sort of communicating with Dee in the chat room about sort of this feeling of like, hey, I'm doing everything you guys said. I've been applying for these roles, these entry-level positions, and I'm just not hearing back. And I think probably the biggest sort of myth that college and K through 12 perpetuates in all of our minds is that the rest of the world is a meritocracy, just like school. The idea that if you work hard, put in the time, you've got good grades, and everything will come out hunky-dory. Unfortunately, the reality of the working world is that a meritocracy is just window dressing. Deep down beneath that, we all know, as Nicholas mentioned, we're getting our jobs through our networks, through the fact that we know someone on the inside. And while that may seem totally unfair, I want you all to know that you have a crazy unfair advantage as San Jose State students, because you have more alumni working at all these firms than pretty much any other school out there. Like if you check out that link that I just shared in the chat, you will find that there are more Spartans at Apple than there are Cardinal or Golden Bears. And so if you feel like, oh my goodness, poor me, I've worked so hard, but I'm getting nowhere, know that you have that foot in the door already, and you just got to use it. Take advantage of the fact that there are so many alums who were themselves, to Nicholas's point, helped by alumni before them, and take advantage of that to open your own door.
Yes, and then I feel like being at SJSU has helped me tremendously, because as I finished my bachelor's degree, I was looking for the same type of work that I do now, but I really wasn't getting anywhere. I feel like I didn't have enough experience. And just to preface this, I do know people that have only had a bachelor's degree and they are in the field. So they're a little more lucky than I was. So going to SJSU helped me make those connections, because so many people from the same programs I took are at Google, at Apple, or Facebook, Amazon. And then the fact that I stayed in touch with my professors who are also in contact with the students has really, really helped me. And the other thing is, you're going to submit so many applications. I did this. I would submit applications like every day. I would write emails. I would write cover letters. It's so defeating, but eventually you'll get there. And it really, really, really helps if you do end up finding a really good recruiter. Hold on to them. There's a lot of ones that are not very helpful, but when you find a good one, they will really tremendously help you get that first job. And then the other thing is, I mentioned that I am a contractor. That means I don't actually get paid by the company that I work for. So, and then this was the same for when I worked at Google, as it is when I at Facebook right now. And those jobs can kind of feel not great, because you're technically not the employee of the big tech company, but there are the best way to get your foot in the door. There are still many tech companies that do conversion. Google is not one of them. But you can still get that foot in the door, meet new people, and once they see how you work, you can really make an impact and get a job or a referral that will help you later get a full-time position.
I had a question about that, because a lot of students, I think, everyone talks about like networking, but then how do you do it right? Because I know some students, like, they'll randomly search for a recruiter and ask for a job directly, and I don't think anyone wants that, right? Like when someone approaches you and, asks you for something, like, how do you put some, I don't know if it's the right way, but maybe like what advice would you give, like, to students to help them do it in such a way where it won't make the other person at the receiving end feel like they're being used, right?
Yeah, I would say start with your professor. That's how I got to know the people at Google, because they're probably already talking. Maybe grab a coffee, stuff like that. So it's not just an email and just asking for something. But I know there's a lot of people that are willing to help, are willing to point you in the right direction or send you that job letter, job information before they even post it, In terms of recruiters, honestly, I don't know. I got really lucky when that one contacted me that was really good, but a ton of ones that didn't even look for a job that some people would contact me for software engineering jobs. And I'm like, where do you think in my experience I could code? So I don't have exactly specific advice for that, but definitely start with your professors.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's just,
sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Jennifer.
Just
go
real
ahead.
quick, I actually started as a contractor too. So, but I didn't start with a specific contractor. I signed up for a recruiting agency, and that recruiting agency placed me at NVIDIA as a contractor. And I worked as a contractor for a year with a entry-level job that is doing stuff that people wouldn't deem as very glamorous at all. Just basically, people were just giving me whatever they didn't want to do. So I took it and I learned from it, and I grew. But in a year, I was converted. So just know that is an option too.
I just wanted to reinforce some of the stuff around networking that Jeremy, Nicholas, everybody was saying. But it's one thing, I'll be very honest, I was terrible at networking, even though I'm here speaking and I'm very happy speaking with people and I led an organization. That's not how I started at all. It was very much introverted, shy, and I think I still am, but it's, it's stuff that you're going to learn and pick up over time. And you can tell with the amount of hair I have, I'm not young, so I've been doing this for a while. But it's stuff you're going to learn. I mean, a buzzword that's out there right now is, and I'm not disparaging it, but you hear like be authentic. And whether you like that word or not, you know, I just think of it, just be natural, do things in a natural way. Don't force yourself to go on LinkedIn or go elsewhere and just spam people or whatever. It is a shotgun approach. I think Harsha was saying this too. You can't be terribly targeted all the time. But if you have a sincere interest of just like, hey, I saw you have this role, can I just talk to you? I don't even know what questions to ask. Can you just humor me, right? I'm just young, I'm starting out, I don't know much. You'll be surprised. There's a lot of people that will spend time with you. I mean, myself and I think the panelists that are here, right, we're spending some good amount of time right now, and I'm sure we'll be happy with follow-ups. There are people out there, and I've done the same in my career, where frankly, I was too young and naive. I didn't even really know how to use them. So it doesn't even matter. Just make the effort and show up with them once a month, once a quarter, what have you. And if they're not the right person, maybe because, you know, you're not a good match for them right now, they're not for you, it's a good process to go through, and you'll learn as you go through that. And, you know, and networking doesn't have to be a bad word like, oh, okay, it's just who you know. And, you know, Jeremy said about meritocracy. I mean, at the end of the day, we're humans, and we do things based on relationships, no matter how you want to argue that. So we need to build relationships, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a, you know, a sneaky thing. It's just that's how we work. We're humans. So, you know, get on LinkedIn if you're not right now, and just build that network and just look for people. And it's okay if you're kind of fumbling in the dark and not sure who to go after and what have you. But I think it's really important, especially as you start your career. It's going to be a long journey. The bigger your network is, the more possibilities you're going to have. And there probably will be some questions around the virus and the pandemic and jobs and all that. And, you know, there's going to be ups and downs. I went through the dot-com bubble, the bust. I went through the great financial crisis in 2008, 9. There's going to be worries and concerns all the time. The world's going to keep spinning. That's not going to stop. And your network and how you nurture that is going to be really important to you long term. And again, make it natural. Don't be like fake and what have you. You're really trying to learn. And I think that learning will benefit you as you go.
I just wanted to show off a really quick black belt level LinkedIn hack for all those who are like, hey, I'm trying to do the networking game, but I'm getting nowhere. I just want to be really clear. If you put yourself in the recruiter's shoes, you can understand why most recruiters aren't going to help you out. If you're a recruiter, you're basically a mercenary. You don't work for one specific team or one specific role. You're trying to fill a dozen roles and then move on to a dozen more roles to fill. And so your job is just to sort of get bodies in seats. Whereas if you're the hiring manager, AKA your future boss, you absolutely have aligned incentives with finding someone awesome. Because if you hire someone great, they're going to make your whole life better. If you hire someone terrible, they could ruin your life. And so because those folks are the ones you really want to get in touch with, check this out. If you're on LinkedIn, you can run a search like, hey, we're hiring for people who went to San Jose State. And voila, more than 100 Spartans have raised their hand and said, I am hiring at Benchling. I'm hiring at Thumbtack. And they are basically just putting their hand up there and saying, please give me a high five. Show me some Spartan love. And so the fact that they're out there and they're sort of shining that bat signal to you, it's only up to you to respond in kind. So I encourage you to be aggressive, to reach out, and definitely engage with the folks who want your talent.
Thanks for sharing that, Jeremy, and walking us through how to do that. And I think going back to Sean's point, networking, you know, maintaining or building your network is just like any relationship, right? Like you said, you want to be authentic. You can't just reach out for this one-time event, you know, like you have to really be building that relationship as you would with any relationship in your life, right? So I want to move on to the last question because I do want to make sure I have some time to address some of the audience questions. And I know some of you are already like chatting in the group chat, but I just want to also have a chance to address those that we didn't get around to. And also for those that just came in mid conversation, please email me your ID number so I can make sure, like, if there's any follow-up communication, I can reach out to you. So please, type your ID number and send it to my email. So let me just ask the last question before I go to the audience questions. So what other advice would you give to someone who has a social science or education background interested in working in the tech field? So again, what other advice would you give to someone who has a social science or education background interested in working in the tech field? So I know we already heard a wealth of advice, but maybe there's like additional reminders that you want the students to take away.
I would try to figure out in what area you're particularly interested in, because it will vary. So for me, I was looking, what can I do with a psych degree? Literally Googled that. And or just talking to other people that have the degree that you're pursuing or you already have, and just seeing what they do and what they did with their degree. So, I mean, you're doing this right now with us. So great, first step. And then find out as much as you can about that kind of job and see if that's still something that interests you, and then kind of go from there with all the advice that everyone else also has given you.
I think also just being persistent. Don't give up. I know it's a hard search, and sometimes it takes some time, and that's okay. Do what you got to do, but don't give up. There is a place for you somewhere. And even in a not great time like this, with the whole pandemic thing going on, I graduated in a not so great time as well, and I found a place. I'm sure the other panelists can agree. Sometimes job market's not great, but you landed on your feet, and you all will too. It sometimes just takes a bit of time.
Oh, one more thing. Try to get an internship. That really helps. And to find out about internships, I'm sure that you can find some on Handshake, or look through your professors as well. I think for, in my case, I actually found an internship at NASA because SJSU has a partnership with them. I'm sure there's other companies that SJSU has partnership with that you can get an internship through. You just need to find the point of contact.
On that note, based on what she's saying, the one thing I want to the last advice I want to give for the night is, if you don't know exactly what you want to do or where you want to go or what industry you want to be in within tech, don't be afraid to take a job that is not glamorous, that is not cool, that is not exciting, because getting in on the not so exciting positions is your foot in the door. And then within there, you can start learning about what this person does, what that person does, and then you can network within the company and even move within the company. So that's something I do want, because I know a lot of times people are like, oh, I did all the studying in college, I have this degree, I have this master, I'm too good for this position. I want you guys to take that lens off and think of it as, I'm collecting my superpowers, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, I took a not so glamorous job as my first point in tech, and I 1000% agree with that. All of what you just said. I had a sales academy job. I was learning to be a BDR, and I had no interest in sales. I did not want to talk to people on the phone, none of that. But it led to being an instructor. So I can't really fault taking that job. That was definitely a good first step. So I am that person that you just described. Definitely.
Also, this wasn't my first tech job, but one of my first jobs before I got into tech, I worked at a coffee shop. So, and I got there,
Law firm records clerk. Like, take what you gotta get, right? Yeah.
Okay, so anyone else want to share their last thoughts before I go to the audience questions? No, I think we're good. Okay, so I apologize in advance if I don't get to ask everyone's questions. But I think one of the questions that I want to start with is, as an introvert, what tips do you have to network effectively?
That is not a
So this is
question
for
for
all.
me because I'm extroverted.
So it's for the people who self-identified as introverts.
You're gonna have to get out of your shell a little bit, and I think that for me, I kind of discovered or made this discovery a bit later on after finding a job, that I'm more of an introverted person. But if you already know that about yourself, then you know what to do after you've expended all your energy. So apply that to networking. Go to the event, whatever it is. Shake hands, meet people. Of course, don't shake hands right now. Stay 6 feet away. Don't leave your home. But when it's safe to, go to these events, shake hands, meet people, be yourself. Even if that's your introverted self, you probably have a lot of passion. You have probably a rich inner world. People like that about people. And then when you're done, because you're exhausted, leave. Go home, recuperate, rinse and repeat. And eventually it'll pay off just like it does for everyone else.
I
Actually,
am
go
an
for it, Jennifer.
introvert. Sorry about that. But the one thing I kind of want to advise for introverts to maybe take a soft step to socializing is doing something out of your comfort zone in front of people. And it doesn't have to be a speech. For me, it was dancing. I took like a beginner's salsa dance at SJSU, which great instructor. And you're forced to dance in front of people, which makes you uncomfortable, but you're not actually having to start a conversation. So that's something that I did that maybe someone else can do. It doesn't have to be dance. It could be a sport. It could be a club. I don't know. Yeah.
So it looks like trying something new. Yeah, Jeremy.
I want to say something a little controversial as a fellow introvert here. I think another problem in our society, along with the meritocracy myth, is that we spend so much time telling our kids, you've got to work on your weaknesses. You've got to get better at this thing. We spend way too little time saying play to your strengths. And we all know, if you've read the book Quiet by Susan Cain, that introverts and extroverts have unique strengths, unique superpowers, as we've been talking about. And if your particular superpower, if your cape is that you are incredibly thoughtful and introspective and tactful in the way that you operate, but going into a massive mixer is your kryptonite, don't expose yourself to Lex Luthor. Instead, put on that cape and be proud of it. And a tool like LinkedIn, where you can laser in on the exact right person, the hiring manager for the APM program at Google who controls your fate. Why reach out to a million other people and wear yourself out playing against your strengths when you can reach out to the exact right person with the exact right message that's totally on tone and is going to be really sort of appreciated by that person because you put the thought and care into it. And so if you have that level of really strong empathy and understanding of others, leverage that more than necessarily exposing yourself to things that are going to drag you down and make you want to give up.
I was actually going to say something similar, Jeremy. I totally agree. I did not magically become an extrovert. I think it's a matter of if you can go dance, which, might be frightening for you in front of others, then, you can do that. But for me, it's like we have so many options now to do it on your own terms. So if you go to a happy hour and there's 20 people there and it's loud and it's just not your thing, you don't have to do that. There's a lot of different, there's meetups that might be like 5 people that show up, and it might be a topic or subject that you're really passionate about. So, that would be my big advisement is don't think you gotta get into uncomfortable situations. Of course, you do wanna kind of push your boundaries, of course, so you don't just stay comfortable where you are, but don't think that it's gonna be horrible and you gotta do things that are horribly uncomfortable to get to where you want to go. There's a lot of different ways you can network and build relationships and get to know people.
Okay, so I want to move on to the next question. And it's a combination. I'll combine questions. So are certifications just as important as masters? If you had to choose one, which would be more beneficial? And if you were to choose certification instead of a master, what would you recommend? Yeah.
From a master's point of view, I chose a master's because I kind of wasn't sure what to do after, and I did some certifications, and that didn't seem to get me anywhere. So I feel like doing the master's also helped me connect with more people and network. um, so I think it really is up to you. Someone can speak to the certification parts.
I think the certification thing for me, and the reason I did not do a master's was because I could not afford it. So I definitely wanted to. But for me, like in an ecosystem like Salesforce, isn't it? It's going to be different for every company that has them, or if it's not a company-specific certification, I can't really speak to those. But having, I think I have 5 or 6 of the Salesforce certs. There's a big community aspect to the Salesforce ecosystem. We have community meetups, we have events, we have a lot of different ways to connect with other Salesforce certified professionals. Even if you don't like going to the big event, I completely agree, by the way, Jeremy. If that's not your thing, don't do it. But if you can stand it, anyway. As far as the cert meetups and there are like webinars and all types of online communities that you can join. San Jose has a user group for working Salesforce professionals, but also people who want to be Salesforce professionals. So I think the certifications, as far as my line of work goes, are a massive inlet into the ecosystem and finding a job. It makes finding a job very much easier, not just because you look qualified because of your cert, and I think Sean talked about that earlier. You definitely look qualified, but also because you're going to meet other people who already do the job, and you can learn from them, and you can kind of leverage their knowledge in ways, any way you want to get a job and meet people. So certifications versus masters, I think they're both of equal value when it comes to tech, depending on what you want to do. And so, for a job like Kasha's, I don't know that I would be able to do that with a BA. I think I would be more comfortable even having done the master's level work. For being a application instructor, I don't think I even need a BA to do this. I think a monkey could do my job. So it kind of depends on what you're going to do. But those are both very good avenues into meeting people, just like Kasha said, just in different ways.
And then in terms of masters, for at least I know at Google, the higher the degree you have, the more you will get paid. So that also helps if that's something that's very important to you.
Okay, so and then this is a question, and I don't know if anyone of you can speak to it, but if you can, I'd appreciate it. What would be the best advice for people that are starting in this area late in life? So maybe this is someone who was in a career in one career for a couple of years and then now want to make a transition after so many years. Like, what advice would you give for people who are making a career transition, I guess?
I've done the career transition thing, although it was internally at Salesforce, so a bit of a slant on that, but I went from instructing to implementing, which are two very different careers. Implementing technical, or not technical, but application solutions for enterprise clients is very different than teaching a 4-day class. I think one, just having an open mind and being able to receive some feedback from people you trust is a really big thing. Even if you're not looking to change careers, as anything really, kind of ask their advice. Find someone who does that. I think what helped me was treating it as an entire new job, because it is. So I started from, I tried to treat it like I was starting from nothing, even though I technically wasn't. I had some product knowledge, but I kind of went into it with that mindset. I was just trying to be a sponge. Now, there are probably some more valuable advice from other panelists, because I know that you guys probably have maybe some experience with this, but that was my take, was just take it all in, find someone you trust, use the same tactics you would to find a job. It's another job.
And then this question is very specific. I want to try to get to as many of them in the next 10 minutes. And this is very specific, and so someone was asking, as an athletic trainer, I'm very specialized in things like rehab, injury prevention, and emergency care. What are some ways I can market non-tech skills into the tech field, either through my resume or interviews? So I'm kind of curious if you guys know of someone who might have come from health and transitioned into tech, and how, what advice you would give for someone who wants to do that. Any thoughts from anyone?
I do know one person that did clinical psychology before she did UX research. And I'm not exactly sure how the transition was for her and how she marketed those skills. I do know that she ended up doing the same program that I did at SJSU, which is the Research and Experimental Psychology. So I feel like that may have helped. I could, if that specific person wants to email me, I could put you in contact with them.
So I would encourage, that question came from Francisco. I would encourage Francisco to go on SJSU Square and find you there, because you are on SJSU Square.
Yes, and also she is also on SJSU Square. So her name is.
Maybe you could,
yeah.
That's cool. Okay.
And I would also look for like adjacencies, and what I mean by that is, you know, technology is so pervasive now. Maybe look at something that's health related, maybe sports related. There's a ton of, you know, startups that are doing technology mixed in with exercise, what have you. You know, there may not be a million roles like that available, but that, if I have somebody coming in who's a technologist, and I have someone maybe is weak technologist, but at the same time they know that industry or know how to take care of people, train them, what have you, well, then that would give them a leg up in my eyes. So maybe something to think about as far as adjacent markets there.
And
I would
some
say,
sorry.
I would say companies like Fitbit or GoPro would be an example of what Sean is talking about. But even at NVIDIA itself, we have an entire health and medical industry department that we work with, because we develop the digital imaging equipment in health. We also work with doctors and scientists in the health industry to develop AI analysis and deep learning for like things like the COVID-19, which we actually have a huge project. We're working with health and science researchers now. So, I mean, it's not probably directly to what Francisco's asking, but there is some sort of correlation there.
Correlation, yeah.
Yeah.
And since I have,
and also just even if it's not health related, if you have, you know, experience in a different field, a lot of companies, I think, and Sean touched on this, I just want to give it a term to it. A lot of companies verticalize. So they will tailor parts of their business to other sectors of business. So Salesforce, for example, has a health vertical that specializes in things like HRM, health relationship management, things like that. So you can kind of look for those companies that do those things. And it can be hard to find. Sometimes there's a component on a website, like Salesforce has components on their website. I think Oracle even has components on their website for verticalization. That's something you can look for, or even health vertical jobs, something like that. I think, Jeremy, you're the search wizard there, so you might have a better kernel of wisdom on that. But kind of looking for that vertical tilt to a company, because a lot of us tailor parts of our business to fit other kinds of businesses.
and then the next question I want to address to Jeremy, just because I know his background. So Marnelli asks, like, is there a way for people who are interested in child development to work in tech? And I know Jeremy was a kindergarten teacher, so he worked with kids. So Jeremy, do you mind taking this question?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So I think everything everyone just said about healthcare and athletic training applies doubly to education. There are so many ed tech companies right now. So if you want to work specifically in education where it meets technology, you can work at a place like Khan Academy or Class Dojo or any of these other hot startups. That being said, very much like Nicholas's role, every company needs great educators. And so if you're gifted at pedagogy, if you're gifted at instruction, there are often learning and development teams for internal employees, customer success teams for external customers, and lots of opportunities to share your gift with the world just inside the tech sector. So definitely don't be sort of inside the box of like, oh, I have to do education. Find a way to do education in almost any company under the sun.
Thank you. So I think we have maybe two more questions. So I think this goes to Jennifer. Do you have any advice for someone pursuing a career pivot to enter the semiconductor industry with a business degree?
I would say we go back to all of the advice that Jeremy, Nicholas, Sean, and Cassia. I'm sorry if I said your name incorrectly,
No
but
worries.
given that advice about how the opportunities within business, within tech. So Jeremy said it best. Tech companies is a product in the industry, but at the end of the day, it's still a business, and it has all the pillars that businesses need to support this business in running. Whether I'm not sure what business degree they have, but if it's business administration, business analyst, sales business, marketing business, it's all departments that live in every company.
Okay, and then since I have you, Jennifer, and there's a question on what factors are important to focus on converting a contractor job to a permanent job, and if any one of you have agencies to suggest.
Okay, this is a great question, and I think the number one thing, there's a lot of little things, but the number one thing I think that will get you converted, if that's what the company does, is doing your job to over 110% plus be willing to do things outside of your job, so that they could see that you're not only able and capable to do your job, but you're also willing to help and be a team player to help the overall goal. So those are two very, very valuable things that managers look for. And they say, and then when they look at your performance and they look at your quality of work, they'll also think, does this person help the overall team and my job, or does this person take away and slack off? So those are things that people and managers think about.
Yeah, I want to second that. And also, if you don't end up getting converted, don't feel too bad. A lot of the times it does depend on headcount and the budget and how many people they can actually hire. But keep trying and definitely give as much as you can, just like Jennifer mentioned, 110%.
So I have a question, and I think it was partly answered when Jeremy showed us the LinkedIn earlier, but there's two questions, and I'll try to combine them. Are employers hiring telecommunicating jobs out the door, or do I need to wait until after the quarantine to start my career? So are employers hiring right now? A paraphrase would be, what do you think of what's going on right now and how it's affecting the search for entry-level jobs?
I think it depends on the company. I know that Facebook is still doing internships, but other than that, I think they may have put a stop on it. I'm not sure. It really depends.
Yeah, there's always going to be hiring going on. And right now, in fact, one of the customers that I support right now, I have 10 customers that I support. One of them is Gilead, and you guys may have seen them in the news. They actually might have a vaccine, and they're working on something for COVID-19. So as you can imagine, their business is going crazy right now. We're doing a lot for them. So I guess the bottom line is this: you got to be realistic about it. Generally, there's going to be a downturn. There's going to be less available. But at the same time, I've always been a silver lining type of guy. So look at, just like businesses that are going to survive and in fact pull through out of all this stuff even better, is you got to innovate. You have to be creative. We have some new realities we're going to go into right now. Nobody has a crystal ball, but some things I think we know for sure are going to change, maybe permanently or semi-permanently. So what does the future look like? What does tomorrow look like? Because tomorrow won't be like yesterday. So, think about that. Stay hopeful. Even though things are going to be tough, it's going to be temporary. And like I said, I've been through a number of boom and bust cycles. That's just a normal part of life. And I know it sucks if you're like a senior and you're trying to get into the job market. In fact, when I finished my undergrad, it was the same kind of time. It was like a horrible time to go get a job. So, I mean, it's fine. There's going to be stuff available. Just keep your eyes open in terms of what's actually growing, where do you think investment's going to go, and that's kind of, again, going back to the business knowledge. And even if you don't know all this stuff, and you might be young, some of you are not so young, you reach out to people that do have more industry knowledge and experience, and they can share with you that, you know what, I think there's going to be a lot of investment like in these sectors. So why don't you focus there? Maybe get your resume really sharp to appeal to that type of vertical, that type of industry. So there's definitely strategies you can employ regardless of what's going on out there. You don't want to just sit back and just be depressed or down about it because, I mean, it's definitely unprecedented what's happening right now, so let's not kid ourselves, but at the same time, the world's going to keep spinning and, you know, we'll need to do what we need to do. So, and you have a lot of resources at SJSU to help you through that, as well as folks like us that are happy to help.
And I think, I know we're at time, but I do want to end on a positive note. And, you know, thank you for sort of like normalizing this abnormal situation, Sean, and saying that, you know, it's normal, there's ups and downs, it happens. So the last question I want to ask is, you know, given that it can be, you know, depressing at times or overwhelming, like, and this is, anyone can answer, how do you practice self-care? Like, how do you manage, like, work-life balance? And that'll be the last question.
Now it's especially hard since we're working from home. But it's encouraged to go on walks. You can still do that. But when the times are more normal, I think for contractors, it's a little bit easier. You are doing 8 hours a day, you're getting paid by the hour, so it's easier to disconnect. I know it's a little harder for salaried employees, just because at any time you might, I mean, you're still getting paid and you might be pinged at any time during the day. And, you know, when you're hourly, you can be like, no, I'm done. I did my 8 hours. So I feel like someone else with experience in a salaried position could speak
I
to
definitely put bookends on my day. Even though I am a salaried employee, I kind of make that time happen. I have that ease of I guess, schedule constriction because I am not a manager. I am not the person who puts out fires ever. So even if a fire happens, I might be able to help, but I have very little power in my position outside of what I do in the classroom. So that makes it really easy. As far as self-care, though, I like playing video games, but I'm a dirty console gamer. Sorry. My husband's the PC gamer. But I play video games. I like to drive, not like on the freeway, but like on a curvy road. That's my alone time, especially just if I need to be in a different place. So if I wake up at 5 a.m. on a Sunday, which happens quite often, I'll be over like near Calero or Anderson, kind of driving in the hills. But just something that you can do naturally that brings you a little bit of joy. Kind of apply the Marie Kondo method to it, I guess. I know that doesn't apply just to objects; it applies to how you spend your time. So if it brings you joy, do more of that.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very popular topic. We've talked about kind of work-life balance, and people say it's actually a bad term. There's no such thing. It's work-life integration. So, I mean, you can kind of dance around it. I think the key is, like's been said already, have some stuff that's sacred, like what you want to do. Technology has been awesome. Like just now, we have the whole world in this, you know, pandemic, yet we can still work, we can still talk here and what have you. So technology is awesome. It also can intrude like that because it's like, I'm at home, am I working, am I not working, how long do I work? So just set some boundaries of what's really important to you. If you need to go for that walk, just tell yourself you have to go for a walk today and it's not something you're going to skip. I got the luxury, I've built a home gym, so I can just go there and do it unless I'm lazy and I don't want to do it. So it's not easy to do, but I guess the advice is when you make that sacred, whatever it is, an hour of playing video games or going for a walk or just spending some time with your cat or your dog or what you have, that's really important because that will recharge you. It'll get your emotional state, your mental state back to where it needs to be, so you can continue to work, you know, the next morning or maybe later that night because you got some work to do because you're a global company. So that's a lot of things I think we've learned, especially with technology being a curse and a good thing the last 20 years, especially with global companies, is how do you draw some lines to make sure you take care of yourself like that, and you can't feel guilty about it. There's some things that are sacred you got to go and do.
Use your calendar too. If you're the type who gets calendar overloaded, put that time on your calendar and make it,
block it, yep,
purposely sacred, like so everyone knows. Yeah. Kasha, I think you're muted. There you go.
I was typing. Yeah, definitely use the calendar. I put any events, I block this time off to make sure that I remember it, but also so that I know that people know that I can't work at that time, you know. So I think using the calendar is a very good idea.
Okay, so if no one else has anything to add, I know there were additional questions, and I apologize if we didn't get to your question. As I mentioned earlier, Kasha, Sean, and Nick are on SJSU Square, so please reach out to them through that platform. For Jeremy and Jennifer, I'll probably check in with them offline and see like how if someone wanted to follow up, and then I'll just send an email to the attendees of today's event. If this were a live event, there would be a resounding applause. Thank you all for your insights and, spending time with us this evening. We really appreciate your time, and I know we went over 6 minutes, so thank you all. So again, I'll just, if you email me, christine.bautista@sjsu.edu with your ID number, and I have your email, I can do a follow-up if there's anything we want to communicate with you. So thank you all, and I really appreciate it, and I hope you all stay safe and healthy.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, folks.
Bye.
Bye.